The big hall was quiet as Admiral Park finished his speech. And so, the Galactic Academy of Military Sciences welcomes its first human cadets. 3 young Koreans stood tall in their crisp uniforms. Todd looked straight ahead, his face showing no emotion. Next to him, Jiho fought back a smile, his eyes bright with excitement. Yeonmi, the only female in the group, kept her shoulders square and chin up. These 3 cadets represent the best of Earth's Korean Military Academy, Admiral Park continued. They will learn from you, and you will learn from them. Sitting in the audience, Cora leaned toward her fellow alien classmate. They look so fragile, she whispered, her blue skin wrinkled around her 4 eyes as she studied the humans. Lax nodded. Earth is a death world. High gravity, extreme weather, dangerous animals. But their technology is basic. His thin, gray fingers tapped on his datapad, bringing up information about Earth. I heard they still use projectile weapons, Dov added from behind them. His massive frame made the chair creak. Imagine that, throwing metal bits at each other. The 3 aliens laughed quietly, earning sharp looks from their instructors. Meanwhile, across the galaxy at the Korean Military Academy, a similar scene played out. Sergeant Jum stood before a group of alien exchange students, his face stern. "Welcome to Earth," he said. "You are the first non-humans to train at our academy. This is a great honor." The alien students looked around the simple concrete building with poorly hidden disappointment. After the gleaming halls of the Galactic Academy, Earth's military facilities seemed ancient. "This week, you will observe our training methods," Sergeant Jun continued. "Next week, you will join in. Any questions?" Cora raised her hand. "Sir, we've studied your combat methods. Will we really need to do physical training? On most worlds, military training is mostly mental and tactical." Several alien students nodded in agreement. Sergeant Jun's face remained neutral. "On Earth, we train the body and the mind together. You cannot understand our tactics without understanding our physical limits." Back at the Galactic Academy, Ta, Jai-ho, and Yeonmi were shown to their quarters. "This is amazing," Jai-ho said, touching the strange metal walls that seemed to glow from within. "Their technology is at least 200 years ahead of ours." Yeonmi sat on her bed, bouncing slightly on the unusual material. "But did you see how they looked at us? Like we're primitive." Ta nodded. "They think we're weak because we're from Earth. They call our home a death world, but think we're the weakest species to come from it. We'll show them," Jai-ho said with a grin. "Remember what Sergeant Jun always says." All 3 spoke together. Preparation meets opportunity. The next day, the human cadets joined their first class. The topic was non-lethal containment methods. The alien instructor, Professor Zim, asked the humans to demonstrate their approaches. Jai-ho stepped forward. "In Korean military training, we learn hand-to-hand combat first." He demonstrated the simple takedown move on Ta, who played along. The alien students watched with amusement. One whispered, "They still touch each other to fight. How barbaric." Professor Zim silenced them with a look. "Different methods have different values. Humans have fought wars for thousands of years. Perhaps there is something to learn here." As the first day ended, Yeonmi found herself standing alone in the Academy's observation deck, looking at the stars. "It's strange, isn't it?" a voice said behind her. It was Lax, the thin gray alien, being so far from home. "Yes," she replied, "but I'm proud to represent Earth." Lax studied her curiously. "Your world is known for constant conflict, yet you 3 seem peaceful." Yeonmi smiled slightly. "We train for war so we can have peace." Lax seemed confused by this, but before he could respond, an alarm sounded. "First drill of the semester," he explained. "Just a simulation." Yeonmi's training kicked in immediately. She straightened, eyes alert, body ready. Lax noticed the change. For a moment, the human didn't look peaceful at all. and that made him wonder what other surprises these Earth cadets might hold. The morning sun shone bright over the Korean Military Academy. Cora and the other alien students watched from the side of the field as human cadets lined up in perfect rows. "Today, you will observe our morning routine," Sergeant Jun said to the alien group. "Pay attention to how our cadets prepare their bodies and minds." Lax took notes on his datapad, while Dov crossed his forearms, looking bored. The human cadets began with jumping jacks, then push-ups, and then running in place. "This is their training," Cora whispered, her blue skin wrinkling around her mouth. "Children on my world do such things for play." Dov nodded. "My species would barely feel these exercises. What is the point?" "Perhaps it is ceremonial," Lax suggested, "like a morning ritual." After the warm-up, the human cadets moved to a dirt field. They formed pairs and began practicing combat moves. They punched, kicked, and threw each other to the ground. They got up, covered in dirt, and did it again. Cora could not hold back her laugh. They are hitting each other with their hands. Several alien students joined in her laughter. Even Lax, who tried to be respectful, had to hide his smile. "Why not use stun weapons or mind control?" asked a tall, green alien named Pax. "This seems so primitive." Sergeant Jun walked over to the alien group. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp. "Is something funny?" he asked. Cora stood straighter. "Sir, we meant no disrespect. We are just surprised by your methods." "How so?" Sergeant Jun asked. "In the Galactic Academy, we train with technology," Lax explained. "We use simulators and neural links. No one touches each other." Sergeant Jun nodded slowly. "And if your technology fails during battle, what then?" The alien students looked at each other. This question had never come up in their training. "Technology does not fail for advanced species," Dobb said confidently. Sergeant Jun's face remained calm. "I see. Well, continue observing. Your perspectives may change once you join the training tomorrow." As he walked away, Cora shook her head. "These humans are stuck in the past. No wonder they've never left their solar system without our help." Across the field, 2 human cadets were taking a water break. They looked over at the alien group. "They're laughing at us," said Min, wiping sweat from his face. His friend Han nodded. "Sergeant Jun says they think our training is primitive." "Wait until tomorrow," Min replied with a small smile, "when they see what basic training really means." After lunch, the alien students were taken to watch target practice. Human cadets stood in a line, holding what the aliens recognized as projectile weapons, guns that fired metal bullets. "These are still used in your military?" Pax asked, shocked. "For basic training, yes," replied the human guide. "They're reliable and effective." The human cadets fired at paper targets. Each shot made a loud bang that made some alien students jump. "So wasteful," Cora commented, "using physical material for each shot instead of energy beams." "And the noise," Lax added, covering his sensitive ears. "How do they communicate during battle?" Dov looked more interested now. "But notice how the bullets tear through the targets. It's messy, but effective." As they watched, Sergeant Jun approached again. "Tomorrow, you will join this exercise," he told the alien group. "We will shoot these weapons?" Cora asked, unable to hide her surprise. "Of course," Sergeant Jun replied. "This is basic training for all cadets." "But these are actual weapons," Lax said, "not simulators." Sergeant Jun raised an eyebrow. "Did you think we train with toys?" As he walked away, the alien students looked at each other with new concern. "They can't be serious," Cora said. "They wouldn't give untrained students real weapons on the second day." "Maybe they're not real bullets," Pax suggested. "Maybe they're practice rounds, like our stun settings." Dov wasn't so sure. "I studied Earth history. Humans have always trained with real weapons. They believe in learning by doing, even when it's dangerous." Later that evening, Cora found Lax in their shared quarters, reading about human military history. Did you know, Lax said without looking up, that human cadets in Earth's past would train with bayonets, knives attached to the end of these guns. Why? Cora asked. To prepare for stabbing the enemy if they ran out of bullets, Lax replied. For the first time, neither of them felt like laughing. The next morning came too quickly for the alien students. They gathered at the firing range, nervous energy making them fidget. The human cadets were already there, standing in perfect lines, faces serious. Sergeant June walked to the front of the group. Behind him, other instructors wheeled out carts covered with cloth. Today, Sergeant June announced, all cadets will begin weapons training. He pulled the cloth off the first cart. Rows of black metal guns lay there, neatly arranged. The alien students stared. These are standard K-14 rifles, Sergeant June explained. Each cadet will be assigned one. This will be your weapon for the next 6 months. Lax raised his hand. Sir, are these functional weapons? Sergeant June looked confused. Of course they are functional. What would be the point otherwise? The human cadets tried not to smile at the aliens' shocked faces. Cora stepped forward. At the Galactic Academy, we train with simulators first. We don't touch real weapons until our 3rd year. A small smile appeared on Sergeant June's face. Here on Earth, we believe in learning by doing. The instructors began passing out the rifles. When Dov received his, he almost dropped it. It's so heavy, he complained. Next to him, a human cadet named Sun adjusted his grip. Hold it like this, he said quietly. It gets lighter when you get used to it. Sergeant June walked to the second cart and pulled off its cloth. Boxes of bullets sat in neat rows. Today you will learn to load, aim, and fire your weapon. Lax looked at the bullets with wide eyes. These are live rounds. Yes, Sergeant June said simply. How else would you learn what a rifle can do? The alien students exchanged worried looks. This was not what they expected. The class moved forward. First, the instructors showed how to check if a rifle was loaded. Then they demonstrated how to load bullets into the magazine. Safety first, Sergeant June reminded them. Never point your weapon at anything you don't intend to shoot. When it was time to load live ammunition, Cora's hands shook. The human cadet next to her, a young woman named Yuna, noticed. Like this, Yuna said, showing her the correct way to hold the magazine. Push down and forward until you hear the click. Why do you train with real bullets? Cora asked quietly. It's dangerous. Yuna shrugged. War is dangerous. Better to learn that now than when your life depends on it. The cadets lined up at the firing range. Targets were set up 100 meters away. Simple paper with human-shaped outlines. First group, prepare to fire, Sergeant June ordered. 5 human cadets and Dov stepped forward. The humans moved with confidence, raising their rifles and taking aim. Dov copied their stance, his massive arms struggling to hold the rifle steady. Fire. The sound was deafening. 5 shots hit their targets. Dov's shot went wide, missing completely. Second group. Cora stepped up with 4 humans. Her 4 eyes blinked rapidly as she tried to aim. The rifle felt wrong in her hands. Fire. Cora pulled the trigger. The rifle kicked back against her shoulder, harder than she expected. Her shot hit the edge of the target. The human cadets all hit near the center. Group after group took turns. By the end, every alien student had fired at least 1 shot. Most had missed their targets completely. That concludes today's basic lesson, Sergeant June announced. Tomorrow, we move to moving targets. As they cleaned their weapons, Lax turned to Pax. This is their idea of basic training, using deadly weapons on day 1. Pax nodded, looking worried. And moving targets tomorrow. What does that mean? A human cadet overheard them. It means the targets will be moving, he said with a smile. And so will you. Later, in the mess hall, the alien students sat together, talking quietly. I never fired a real weapon before today, Cora admitted. At the Galactic Academy, our combat simulators create mental images. No one gets hurt. Humans train this way from the beginning, Dov said, rubbing his sore shoulder. No wonder they survived on their death world. Lax looked thoughtful. Maybe we've been wrong about them. Their methods seem primitive, but they work. Cora finished. I've never seen cadets so comfortable with weapons. Across the room, Sergeant June watched the alien students with satisfaction. Their laughter from yesterday was gone. Now, there was respect in their eyes. And they were just getting started. Today we test your physical limits, Sergeant June announced. The morning sun was barely up, but all cadets, human and alien, stood at attention in their exercise uniforms. Before them stretched an obstacle course. Mud pits, tall walls, ropes hanging over water, crawl spaces, and barbed wire made up what the humans called the Beast. You will complete this course carrying your full gear, Sergeant June continued. He pointed to the packs on the ground. Each weighed about 20 kilograms. Dov picked up a pack and frowned. This is more than double what we carry at the Galactic Academy. Cora tried to lift hers and nearly fell over. Earth's gravity is already stronger than my home world. This is impossible. Lax looked worried. Humans evolved in high gravity. This gives them an unfair advantage. A human cadet named Jin smiled. That's the point. In space, we're weaker than you. So here on Earth, we push ourselves harder. Sergeant June divided them into teams of 4, 2 humans and 2 aliens per team. First team to complete the course earns extra rest time tomorrow. Cora got paired with Yuna from the firing range. Their team included Lax and a quiet human male named Ho. Don't worry, Yuna told them. Just keep moving. We'll help you. The whistle blew. 20 teams rushed toward the first obstacle, a 3-meter wall. The human cadets reached it first. They showed the aliens how to climb, where to place hands and feet. But Earth's stronger gravity made every movement harder for the alien students. Dov, with his 4 strong arms, did better than most. But even he breathed heavily after clearing the first wall. How do you do this every day? He asked Sun, his human teammate. Sun adjusted his heavy pack. We can barely do it at first, but our bodies adapt. Yours will too. The mud pit came next. The humans dove in without hesitation, crawling under barbed wire that hung just 30 centimeters above the mud. Cora stared in horror. We have to go into that. Yuna was already covered in mud. Yes, keep your head down and follow me. Lax went next, his thin body shivering in the cold mud. His species hated dirt. They were known for being clean and precise. But he pushed forward, copying Yuna's movements. By the middle of the course, the difference between humans and aliens became clear. The human cadets moved steadily, tired but determined. Most alien students struggled to stand, their muscles failing under Earth's gravity and the heavy packs. Sergeant June watched from a tower, making notes. Interesting, he said to another instructor. The Proximan, Lax, is adapting quickly. The Centaurian, Cora, has good upper body strength, but poor endurance. Halfway through the course, Cora fell. Her legs simply gave out as she tried to climb a rope over a water pit. She splashed into the muddy water and couldn't get up. I can't do it, she gasped. This is for humans, not me. Yuna, who had already reached the other side, jumped back into the water. Yes, you can, she said firmly. I'll help you. We finish together, or not at all. On another part of the course, Lax was surprised to see a small human female cadet pass him. It was Eunmai, one of the humans who had gone to the Galactic Academy. Despite being half his size, she carried the same heavy pack and moved twice as fast. Her uniform was soaked with sweat, but her face showed pure determination. How? Lax whispered as she disappeared ahead. After 2 grueling hours, the last team finally crossed the finish line. Every cadet, human and alien, was covered in mud, sweat, and in some cases, blood from small cuts. Sergeant June looked at his timer. "The course record is 43 minutes, he announced. Today's best time was 52 minutes. The winning team, which included Dov and Sun, received water bottles and sat in the shade. Cora collapsed on the ground, her blue skin pale with exhaustion. "That was the hardest thing I've ever done," she admitted. Yuna sat beside her, equally tired but recovering faster. "This is just Tuesday for us." Lax looked at the human cadets with new respect. "We thought you were primitive because you trained your bodies instead of relying on technology. But now I see why." Sergeant June overheard and nodded. "Tomorrow will be harder," he promised, "but you'll be stronger." For once, none of the alien students laughed. The morning briefing room was quiet. Sergeant June stood before a model of a small building. All cadets watched closely. "Today we begin real combat simulations," he said. "This is what we call a kill house. It teaches you to clear rooms where enemies might be hiding." The alien students looked at each other. They had heard about this training, but didn't believe it was real. "You will enter in teams of 4, Sergeant June continued. "Inside are targets. Some are enemies, some are civilians. You must shoot only the enemies." Lax raised his hand. "With simulation weapons, correct?" Sergeant June shook his head. "With your service rifles and live ammunition." A shocked murmur went through the alien students. "But that's dangerous," Cora said. "What if we shoot each other by mistake?" "Then you will learn a valuable lesson," Sergeant June replied calmly. "But first, I will demonstrate proper technique." He picked up his rifle and walked toward the door of the kill house. 4 other instructors joined him. "Watch carefully," he told the cadets. The instructor team entered the kill house. Suddenly, loud gunfire erupted from inside. The alien students jumped at each bang. After 30 seconds, it was quiet again. Sergeant June and his team walked out, their rifles still smoking. "Now let's review what we did," he said, as if shooting live rounds indoors was the most normal thing in the world. The first cadet teams nervously prepared to enter the kill house. Cora checked her rifle 3 times, hands shaking. "I can't believe we're doing this," she whispered to Lax. "At the Galactic Academy, we practice this in virtual reality." Lax nodded. "Humans don't seem to value safety the way we do." A cheerful voice interrupted them. "Safety third." It was Jae-ho, one of the Korean cadets who had gone to the Galactic Academy. He was back visiting for a special joint training day. "What do you mean, safety third?" Cora asked. "Isn't safety supposed to be first?" Jae-ho grinned. "In theory, yes. But in combat, the mission is first, your team is second, and your safety is third." Before Cora could argue, it was her team's turn to enter the kill house. She took a deep breath and followed Yuna through the door. Inside, the building was dim. Fake walls created a maze of rooms. Pop-up targets appeared suddenly, some shaped like enemies with weapons, others like civilians. Cora hesitated at her first target, but Yuna didn't. Bang! A clean shot to the enemy target's head. The noise inside the small rooms was deafening. Real bullets hit walls, sending splinters flying. Cora felt her heart pound as she turned each corner, not knowing what would appear. When an enemy target popped up in front of her, she fired on instinct. Her shot hit its shoulder, not a kill shot, but enough to count. As they moved to the final room, a target suddenly sprang up behind Cora. She didn't see it, but Jae-ho did. He dove across the room, firing as he moved. His body slammed into Cora, pushing her down as his bullets destroyed the target. "Always check your corners," he said, helping her up. Cora stared at him in shock. "You could have been shot." Jae-ho shrugged. "But I wasn't." When all teams had completed the kill house, they gathered outside for review. Most alien students looked shaken. The human cadets were excited, comparing notes on their performance. "How can you be so calm?" Lax asked Ho. "We were using real bullets in there." Ho seemed confused by the question. "That's the point. In real combat, no one uses practice rounds. Sergeant June called for attention. Overall, not bad for first-timers. Human cadets averaged 82% accuracy. Alien cadets averaged 43%. Dov raised his hand. "Sir, why don't you use simulators? They're safer and can create more scenarios." "Because simulators can't teach you this," Sergeant Jun replied. He picked up a spent bullet casing from the ground. The weight of a real trigger pull. The kick of a real gun. The sound that can't be faked. The fear that sharpens your senses. He looked at each alien student. In real combat, fear is your ally if you've trained with it. It's your enemy if you haven't. Cora thought about Jaiho diving across the room, firing accurately while in midair. She had thought humans were primitive. Now she wondered if they understood something her people had forgotten. "Tomorrow," Sergeant Jun said, "we do it again, but with the lights off." The alien students didn't laugh this time. They were too busy checking their rifles, preparing for tomorrow. And Cora found herself doing the same. After 2 weeks of intense physical training, the cadets finally moved to the classroom. The alien students felt relief as they sat at desks instead of crawling through mud or dodging bullets. "Today begins our theoretical exchange," Sergeant Jum announced. "You will learn about human military history and strategy. We will learn about your species' approach to warfare." Lax smiled for the first time in days. This was familiar territory. At the Galactic Academy, most training happened in classrooms, not on firing ranges. "First," Sergeant Jun said, "each alien student will research one human conflict. Tomorrow, you will present what you learned." He assigned each alien a different war from Earth's history. Cora got the Korean War. Lax received World War I. Dov was given the Cold War. The cadets spent the day in the Academy's library. Cora stared at the screen as she read about the Korean War. "This is horrible," she whispered to Lax. 3 million people died in just 3 years. Lax nodded, his thin face pale. World War II was worse. At least 50 million deaths. "My species hasn't had a war in 500 years, Cora said. "We thought we had evolved past violence." Dov joined them, his large frame making the library chair creak. The Cold War didn't have many direct battles, but it shaped Earth for decades. Yuna, who was helping the aliens with their research, overheard them. "Earth has rarely known peace," she said. "That's why we train the way we do." "But why use real bullets in training?" Lax asked. "Why risk injury or death?" Yuna thought for a moment. "Because our enemies use real bullets." The next day, each alien presented their research. Cora stood nervously at the front of the classroom. "The Korean War showed how terrain affects combat," she explained. "Mountains made it hard to move troops. Winter cold killed soldiers on both sides." After her presentation, a human instructor asked, "What did you learn that applies to modern space warfare?" Cora paused. That physical conditions matter as much as technology. The side that can endure harsh conditions longer often wins. The instructor nodded, pleased. When Lax presented about World War II, he focused on the massive production of weapons and vehicles. "Humans built 286,000 aircraft in just 4 years, he said, amazed. "My world's entire fleet is only 12,000 ships." "And what does that tell you?" Sergeant Jun asked. "That humans can change their entire society for war if needed," Lax replied. "No other species does this." After all presentations finished, Sergeant Jun addressed the class. "Now you understand why we train as we do. Humans have fought each other for our entire history. We prepare for the worst because we have seen the worst." That evening, the alien students gathered in their quarters. The mood was quiet. "I always wondered why humans were allowed into the Galactic Alliance despite their primitive technology," Dov said. "Now I know." "They're warriors," Cora agreed. "Not just soldiers like us, but warriors to their core." Lax looked up from his notes. "Did you know that human militaries still teach knife fighting? In case all their technology fails, they can still fight with blades. That seems excessive, Cora said. Does it? Pax asked, joining the conversation. After what we've learned this week. Meanwhile, in another part of the academy, Sergeant June met with the human cadets. What have you noticed about our alien visitors? He asked. Jin spoke first. They're learning fast, sir. Especially Cora and Lax. They're still not comfortable with live ammunition, Sun added. But their accuracy is improving. Yuna raised her hand. They're starting to understand why we train the way we do. I saw Cora practicing her rifle stance after hours yesterday. Sergeant June nodded, pleased. Good. Tomorrow we begin combined training. They will teach us about their advanced targeting systems. We will teach them how to function when those systems fail. Ho grinned. Are we using the mud pit again, sir? Of course, Sergeant Jun replied with a rare smile. With live fire this time. The human cadets cheered. Across the academy, the alien students felt a sudden chill, as if sensing what was coming. But this time, they didn't laugh. The combined training exercises were halfway complete when the alarms went off. Red lights flashed throughout the academy. A voice came over the speakers. This is not a drill. All cadets report to emergency stations. Containment breach in Lab 7. The human cadets moved instantly, grabbing emergency gear from lockers and forming into teams. The alien students hesitated, confused. What's happening? Cora asked Yuna as they ran down a hallway. Lab 7 is the experimental weapons lab, Yuna explained. If there's a breach, it could be very bad. They reached the main hall where Sergeant June was organizing response teams. Communications are down, he told the gathered cadets. We can't reach the lab team or outside help. We need to secure the area and help any injured personnel. He quickly divided them into teams. Cora found herself with Lax Ta, who had returned from the Galactic Academy for joint exercises. And Ho. Team 3 will approach from the east entrance, Sergeant June ordered. Check for radiation or chemical leaks before entering. Tad led Team 3 toward Lab 7. Unlike the normally cheerful human cadets, he was completely serious now. Put these on, he said, handing out breathing masks from an emergency kit. If your skin starts to burn or itch, tell me immediately. As they approached the lab, they saw smoke coming from under the door. A red warning light flashed above it. Radiation levels normal, Ho said, checking the small device. But air quality is poor. Ta nodded. Masks tight. Lax, you and I will go first. Cora and Ho follow and watch our backs. Cora was surprised to see Ta taking command so naturally. At the Galactic Academy, he had been quiet and respectful, always following alien instructors' orders. They entered the lab carefully. Inside, equipment was on fire and broken glass covered the floor. 3 lab workers lay unconscious near a large machine that was making a dangerous humming noise. We need to get them out first, Ta said. Then find the emergency shutdown for that device. As they moved to help the injured workers, the machine's humming grew louder. Sparks flew from its control panel. That's going to explode, Lax said, his scientific training helping him recognize the danger. The containment field is failing. Ta made a quick decision. Ho, help Cora get these people out. Lax, show me how to shut down that machine. Cora and Ho carefully lifted the injured humans. As they carried them toward the door, part of the ceiling collapsed, blocking their exit. We're trapped, Cora said, feeling panic rise in her chest. Ho remained calm. There's another exit through the storage room. Follow me. Meanwhile, Tai and Lax worked on the failing machine. Lax examined the controls. It's an experimental energy weapon, he explained. The cooling system has failed. It needs to discharge the energy safely, or it will explode. Ta looked around the room quickly. Can we redirect the energy somewhere? Lax pointed to a heavy cable. If we connect it to the ground line, maybe. But it could electrocute whoever touches it. Without hesitation, Ta grabbed rubber gloves from a nearby workstation. Tell me what to do." In the storage room, Cora and Ho found the emergency exit blocked by fallen equipment. "We need to move this," Ho said, pointing to a heavy metal cabinet. "Together on three." Cora's muscles strained as they lifted the cabinet. Earth's gravity made it feel twice as heavy as it would on her world. But weeks of human-style training had made her stronger than before. Back at the machine, Lax guided Tai through the dangerous process of redirecting the energy. "Connect the blue wire to the ground port," Lax said. "Careful. If it touches any metal, it could arc." Tai's hands were steady as he made the connection. The machine's humming changed pitch, then slowly faded. "It's working," Lax said. "The energy is discharging safely." Just as Cora and Ho cleared the exit and moved the injured personnel out, Tai and Lax joined them. "Machine is stable," Tai reported. "We should get these people to the medical bay." Outside, they found other teams had responded to different areas. Some fought fires, others helped injured people. Everyone worked together, humans and aliens, without hesitation. Later, when the emergency was over, Sergeant June gathered all cadets in the assembly hall. "Today wasn't a drill," he said, "but your training worked. No lives were lost, and damage was contained." He looked at the alien students with approval. "You responded well, especially Team 3. Cora felt a strange pride. For the first time, she didn't feel like a visitor learning strange human ways. She felt like a cadet who had passed a real test. Tai caught her eye across the room and gave her a small nod of respect. Yes, humans trained with live ammunition. They crawled through mud and pushed their bodies to the limit. But today, Cora understood why. 2 days after the lab incident, the alien students sat together in the Academy's garden. For once, no one was practicing combat moves or checking weapons. "I sent a message to my instructors at the Galactic Academy," Cora said. "I told them about the lab emergency and how we responded." "What did they say?" Lax asked. "They were surprised we helped instead of waiting for the emergency teams." Cora plucked a small flower from the grass. "On my world, military cadets are not trained for rescue operations. That's for special units only." Dov nodded. "Same on my world. We're taught to secure the area and wait for experts." "But there wasn't time to wait," Lax said quietly. "People would have died." They fell silent, thinking about how differently the emergency might have ended with their homeworld's approach. Across the garden, Sergeant June watched the alien students. He turned to the academy director beside him. "They're changing," he observed. "They no longer laugh at our methods." The director nodded. The lab incident taught them more than any planned exercise could. Later that day, Cora found Sergeant June in his office. She stood at attention in the doorway. "May I speak with you, sir?" He motioned her in. "Of course. Sit down." Cora sat stiffly in the chair. "I want to apologize for my behavior when I first arrived. I thought human training was primitive and funny. I was wrong." Sergeant June's face remained neutral, but his eyes softened. "Why do you think you were wrong?" "Because your training works," Cora said simply. "When the lab emergency happened, I knew what to do. I was scared, but I could still function." She paused. "At home, we're never put in real danger during training. So when real danger comes, we freeze." Sergeant June nodded. "Fear is like any other enemy. You must face it to defeat it. I've asked my home government to change our training program," Cora continued, "to include some of your methods." This finally brought a smile to Sergeant June's face. "And what did they say?" "They're sending instructors to learn from you," Cora replied. "They were impressed by our performance during the emergency." That evening, the human and alien cadets gathered for a special meal. The Academy kitchen had prepared foods from all their homeworlds. Humans tried alien dishes, and aliens sampled Korean food. Jai-ho watched in amusement as Dov struggled with chopsticks. "Here, try holding them like this," he demonstrated. Dov's 4 hands made it complicated, but he eventually managed to pick up a piece of kimchi. His face turned interesting colors when he tasted the spicy food. "Water," he gasped. Everyone laughed, but it was friendly laughter now, shared between comrades, not at each other's expense. Across the room, Lax and Ho were deep in conversation. "My people have sensors that can detect movement through walls," Lax explained. "But in the lab, with all the electrical interference, they would have failed." Ho nodded. "That's why we train to use all our senses, eyes, ears, even smell." "I never understood why humans practiced fighting in the dark," Lax admitted. "Now I do." At another table, Yeonmai was back from the Galactic Academy for the weekend. She sat with Korra and Yuna, comparing experiences. "The aliens at the Galactic Academy laughed at me too," Yeonmai said, "until I showed them how to maintain their weapons without computer assistance." "Can you teach us?" Korra asked. "I've realized I depend too much on technology." Yeonmai smiled. "Of course. And maybe you can teach me about your navigation systems. They're amazing." As the evening ended, Sergeant June stood up. The room fell silent. "Today marks a turning point in our exchange program," he announced. "You came as separate groups, humans and aliens. But this week, you became something else." "Cadets," someone called out. Sergeant June nodded. "Just cadets. Not human or alien, but soldiers in training. Different bodies, different worlds, but the same purpose, to protect and serve." He raised his glass. "To understanding through experience." Everyone stood and repeated the toast. As they filed out afterward, Tai fell into step beside Korra. "You did well in the lab emergency," he said quietly. Coming from the serious human, this was high praise. "I had good training," Korra replied. Tai smiled slightly. "Yes, you did." That night, for the first time since arriving on Earth, Korra cleaned her rifle without being told to. The weapon no longer seemed primitive or funny. It seemed necessary, and she was grateful to know how to use it. 6 months passed quickly. The Academy grounds were decorated with flags from Earth and various alien worlds. It was graduation day for the exchange program. Korra adjusted her uniform nervously. The blue fabric was stiff and formal, nothing like the comfortable training clothes she had grown used to. Beside her, Lax and Dov were also getting ready. "I can't believe it's over," Lax said, his thin fingers struggling with the complex collar of his dress uniform. Dov nodded, his 4 hands making quick work of his own outfit. "Remember our first day, when we laughed at the humans using real bullets?" "Seems like a lifetime ago," Korra replied. The graduation ceremony was held on the main parade ground. Rows of chairs faced a stage where the academy leaders and visiting dignitaries sat. Human and alien cadets marched in together, no longer separated by species. Admiral Park, head of the Galactic Military Alliance, stood to speak. "This exchange program began as a simple sharing of techniques," he said. "It has become something far more important." He gestured to the mixed groups of cadets. "These young people have learned from each other in ways we never expected. The human emphasis on practical training with real weapons and conditions has impressed our galactic instructors. And the alien technological expertise has given Earth's military new tools and perspectives." Korra sat tall in her chair, feeling proud. Next to her, Yuna gave a small smile. After the speeches, awards were presented. To everyone's surprise, the Outstanding Cadet Award went to both Tai and Korra, the first joint award in Academy history. They stood together on the stage as Admiral Park explained. These 2 cadets showed exceptional leadership during the laboratory emergency. They combined human decisive action with alien technical knowledge to save lives and prevent disaster. Tai accepted his medal with a formal bow. Korra followed his example, her blue skin darkening with emotion. As they returned to their seats, Ta whispered, "Good job, warrior." It was the highest compliment a human could give. After the ceremony, the cadets gathered for a final meal together. The mood was both happy and sad. They had completed their training, but soon they would part ways. Director Kim of the Korean Military Academy stood to make an announcement. The exchange program has been so successful that we are making it permanent, he said. Each year, new cadets will train together. But we also have opportunities for this year's graduates. The room grew quiet as he continued. Yeon-mai has been offered a position as combat instructor at the Galactic Academy, and Korra has been invited to remain here as a tactical advisor. Surprised murmurs filled the room. Never before had a non-human been offered a permanent position at Earth's military academy. Later, as the cadets said their goodbyes, Korra found Surgeon Jun. "I've accepted the position," she told him. "I want to stay and learn more." He nodded. "Good. You'll start by teaching our first years about Centaurian movement tactics, and I'll teach you advanced Earth combat driving." "With real vehicles?" Korra asked, already knowing the answer. "Of course," he replied with a rare smile. "Would you expect anything less?" Across the room, Jai-ho was exchanging contact information with Dov. "You should visit my home world," Dov said. "The gravity is much lighter. You could jump 3 times higher than here." "Only if you let me bring my rifle," Jai-ho joked. "I need to practice every day, or Surgeon Jun will know somehow." They both laughed, remembering how the surgeons seemed to always know when cadets skipped training. As the sun set on the academy, Ta found Korra on the observation deck where they had first met 6 months ago. "Will your people think you've become too human?" he asked. Korra looked out at the stars. "Maybe, but they'll also see how much stronger I am now." She turned to him. "Will your people accept a blue alien as their instructor?" "They'll complain about the tough training," Ta said with a small smile. "But they won't care what color you are." They stood in comfortable silence, watching Earth's moon rise. "I used to think humans were primitive because you trained with live ammunition from day one," Korra said finally. "Now I understand that's exactly what made you strong." Ta nodded. "And we've learned that your technology isn't just advanced tools, it's a different way of thinking." Below them, the lights of the academy glowed in the growing darkness. Human and alien cadets moved between buildings, no longer separate groups but comrades with a shared purpose. The laughter of those first days was gone, replaced by something much more valuable: respect.